Hello everybody, Adrian Chandler from La Serenissima here. Here to tell you a little bit about Nicola Matteis, who is the subject of our new programme that we are due to be performing later this month. Nicola Matteis isn't a particularly well-known composer. In fact, for particularly the early part of his life, most of the information we have sort of concerns his father, who confusingly is also called Nicola Matteis. His dad arrived in England around about 1672. We think he was probably from the Naples area of Italy, and Roger North, in his musical grammarian, said that in order to get to England, he basically walked the whole distance, travelling with his violin under his coat at his back. England in 1672 was quite a popular place for musicians from the continent to come and find work. The return of the monarchy, the Restoration, brought an end to Cromwell's Republic, and because of this there was a greater sort of tolerance towards Catholicism in England. The English had spent decades trying to get rid of a Catholic monarch, with a very bloody civil war towards the end of it. But they realised that in actual fact Cromwell wasn't really much better, so it was best, why not have Charles II back on the throne of England. With this sort of newfound tolerance towards Catholicism, there was also a massive sort of flowering of the arts. It was a real golden age for the arts. So people like Henry Purcell, Grinling Gibbons, Peter Lely, they all found work at the court of Charles II. And it was this sort of this situation in which Matteis the Elder arrived in 1672. Nicola Matteis the Younger, probably born round about 1677. Don't know who his mother was, but I'm assuming she was English. Anyway, the father converted to Anglicanism, though whether this was actually a spiritual decision or more likely a sort of politically astute decision, we'll never know. But despite the fact that people were more tolerant of Catholics, there was still a large part of the population who viewed Catholicism with great suspicion. So various people, including the king, had to sort of pretend not to be a Catholic. If they really did embrace Anglicanism, Nicola Matteis' choice of wife was a bit odd. The Younger's choice of wife, sorry. It's very confusing when you've got two people with the same name. Nicola Matteis the Younger's choice of wife was a little bit odd, because she was called Susanna Timperley, and she came from a pretty devout Catholic background. She was actually a widow. Her first husband, Henry Timperley, had been close to the at that time Charles II had died, James II had come to the throne. Henry Timperley was a good mate of his, and he was very, very pro-Catholic. And Susanna Timperley's father actually was at the Battle of the Boyne in Ireland on the side of James's Jacobite troops. We all know that James lost that campaign, ended up going into exile in France with a sort of court in exile there. Susanna Timperley's father went with him, and she actually, because her husband had by this time died, she went and joined him over there, but came back round about 1694 to England. And there's a sort of period of 6 years or so, we don't really know what was going on, but we think she obviously met Matteis the Younger, probably cohabiting, which, considering she was a woman of who was 13 years older than him, and she was a woman of significant social standing, must have raised a few eyebrows to be sort of cohabiting with a low-life violinist like myself. So in 1700, Matteis, although he'd been enjoying reasonable success as a violinist in England, he leaves with Susanna for Vienna. and he arrives, and Antonio Pancotti at the Imperial Court in Vienna, he is very keen that Matteis signs on the dotted line. So he gives him a pretty good salary of 250 thalers a year, which is a lot more than any of the other fiddle players at the court. Following year, Matteis makes a petition. He says to the emperor, "Listen, mate, can I go back to London and pick up my kids? Because I'll be wondering where I am, because I've been gone for a year." So he's given 200 ducats to go back to London.